Friends and patriots, welcome and good evening to you. My name is Ajuri Ngelale, and I come to you from the nation's capital. This is Eagle Eye. On this edition of the program, we head to what should be the backbone of Nigeria's modern industrialization efforts. That is the Ajaokuta Steel Complex, located in Nigeria's iron and mineral-rich Kogi state. While this has been a source of unanimous Nigerian lamentation over the decades, we were shocked at the extent of sheer possibility encountered in this decades-long neglected complex. But before we take you to the land of iron and steel, I take you into confidence once again this evening with this entry from my briefing memoranda. There is no exception to the rule that modern developed economies rise at the rate of their production and consumption of iron and steel products. So critical to the development of multiple sectors, the appetite is equally strong in developing markets where the insufficient availability of locally produced steel has led to a significant spike in raw iron ore and finished steel imports. Across the African continent, the trend bears out. But of course, there can be no steel production in the absence of iron ore. Massive infrastructural investments across the continent in the pre-pandemic period between 2015 and 2019 led to an explosion in iron ore demand on the continent from 2.94 million metric tons in 2015 to over 13.34 million metric tons of iron ore imports into Africa in 2019, with Nigeria narrowly trailing Egypt as the largest importer of the commodity at 3.69 million metric tons consumed by the North African powerhouse in 2019 alone. For clarity, it is important to appreciate that iron ores are focal elements in the production of steel, and iron concentrates are used in the production of pig iron, while roasted iron pyrites are used in the production of sulfuric acid. Understanding its centrality to building a sustainably developing industrial economy, the Nigerian government in 1979 established what is now the Nigerian Iron Ore Mining Company, NIAMCO, in Itakpe, Kogi State, to exploit, process, and supply iron ore to end-using industry. It was strategically located near the sprawling Ajaokuta Steel Complex and the Delta Steel Company, sited in Alaja, Delta State, which were all linked by the 326-kilometer Warri-Itakpe Railway, which was only recently completed by President Muhammadu Buhari in 2020 after it had been consistently abandoned by successive governments since 1987. NIAMCO was sited in Itakpe, particularly because of the iron ore-rich lands across Kogi, Niger, Kwara, Kaduna, and Enugu states, amongst others. The most conservative estimates indicate that Nigeria holds over 3 billion tons of iron ore deposits with an annual profit-making capacity of over $10 billion in just the earliest stages of exploitation. For proper perspective, the world's largest iron ore producer, Australia, with 52 billion tons of iron ore deposits, generated a staggering $67.5 billion in raw iron ore exports in 2019 alone. With the capacity to be a major global player in not just raw iron ore production and export, but also in processing finished steel and allied products, Nigeria has the benefit of having a nearly finished steel complex in Ajaokuta and several steel rolling mills in Katsina, Oshogbo, and Jos, amongst others, to offtake its abundant iron ore wealth to generate the most value possible through steel production, domestic utilization, and further international export of diverse grades of raw and processed metals. But as has too often been the case in our country, the deadliest landmines on our collective path to prosperity have often been top-seated Nigerians whose tragic failure to live up to the patriotic responsibility of faithful stewardship that comes with the oath of power over the past several decades has yielded undiluted disaster for our people and our country. As we go deeper into this edition, we will provide greatest detail into where we are and how we will, together, surmount man-made calamity to fulfill the promise of our forefathers to take up our mantle as the pride of the black race and to stand assuredly amongst powers in the comity of nations. Share your thoughts and constructive comments with us on the Eagle Eye Facebook and Instagram page. We go deeper after this short break. Do stay with us. Sitting on 24,000 hectares of mineral-rich lands, there is no shortage of opportunity in the over $8 billion Ajaokuta Steel Complex, which comes complete with 68 kilometers of internal roads, 67 kilometers of internal rail network, and 24 kilometers of underground cable tunnels. This does not include hundreds of millions of dollars worth of adjoining external infrastructure. Out of 3 total development phases, the first phase of the steel complex is approximately 96% complete, with 40 out of 43 plant units conclusively installed. On this warm Harmattan day in Ajaokuta, we open the day with a presentation of the facility by Ajaokuta Steel Complex Managing Director, Engineer Sumaila Abdul Akaba.
Raw material that been identified along between Lokoja and Okene. That's where we have Nyomku today. For the second laddu and the third laddu.
Following the update, the hosting features of the underutilized facility were revealed as we toured the headquarters theater hall built in the 1980s. Followed up by a look at the full complex layout and items produced by the steel plants. Now into the complex proper, we begin at the complex's captive power plant.
All the auxiliaries, we have steam lines all over the alert.
In this incredibly well-considered 110 megawatt facility, there is not only enough space for the present twin turbine and generator sets of 55 megawatts each, but an additional space allocation was made available by the builders for expanded power capacity if the future ever required it. With "Made in USSR" engraved in the power generation sets, the rustic functionality serves as a reminder of a great power grown defunct, a metaphor for the fortunes of this facility. But what we see is not an end, but a story not yet fully written.
And within this period, the capacity, 110 megawatt capacity, can accommodate the capacity of the entire plant. By implication, it will be able to feed the operations of the plant that will give us the electricity. In short, it will just be like 50% usage at that time.
When we have all 3 phases in operation.
When we have all the 3 phases in operation, it will just be using 50% of its capacity.
Incredible.
And actually, we have a room for its expansion too.
Oh, very good, very good. What is the capacity upon potential expansion? What can it expand up to?
We can expand up to over 400 megawatts.
Wow.
Over 400 megawatts.
We have room for 400 megawatts within this power plant alone?
We have the room.
Wow.
We have the infrastructure. It's a very simple power plant because it's a very easy technology, very simple technology. It's just taking water from the river Niger, boiling the water into steam, the steam will turn the turbine that will give us electricity.
Walking into the control room, you can feel the cold and steely reverberations of staff with high hopes too long delayed. Though determined to maintain this living relic until the day of fruition. The managing director looks forward to the upcoming upgrades.
And at the time we were building this plant, this was what was available and available at that time. It's simple, it is rugged, it is easily read. You know, no matter the level of the competence or the technical know-how of the technician, it's easy for them to interpret, to understand the parameters about what is going on within the plant that generates electricity. So for now, we have move on to a digital level. We have PLCs where you have more monitors here that will tell you exactly the parameter and the state of the plant that is running. And if there are challenges, you can quickly attend to them. That's why we need to move to that level.
You would have had men out in the plant with radios, essentially communicating via radio what is going well, what is not going well, etc. And you're now moving into a digital technology that will allow you to take advantage of innovations to see what is happening out there without physically having to be out there.
Correct, that's exactly what we're going to achieve. And that does not entirely mean loss of staff. Instead of those staff walking around physically trying to ascertain the state of those machinery, they'll be in the control room, looking at the monitors, taking appropriate action to rectify issues that are coming up, and actually to ensure that the plant is safely run.
It is fundamental to note that the Ajaokuta Steel Complex was designed to reach all three phases of its development plan, which detail as follows. Upon the completion of Phase 1, the steel complex will produce 1.3 million tons of liquid steel per year and generate round products as well as light steel sections. Upon the completion of Phase 2, the steel complex will produce 2.6 million tons of liquid steel per year, during which flat products are to be added to the product mix. And upon completion of the final Phase 3, the steel complex will produce 5.2 million tons of liquid steel per year, to not only double the volume of the existing product line, but will also add new special grades of steel at that quantum. I'm so impressed at the longevity of this technology. The fact that when the Russians put it in place, they factored in the need for simplicity, but functionality.
Yeah, it's a very rugged plant. Maintenance requirement is minimal and very, very easy for people to understand. And what's most important again is that it lasts for over hundreds of years. That means the return
Hundreds
of years, over 100 years. The return investment is good. You're going to make money that you can use for various expansion, depending on the ability and the capacity of what you want to do.
Fantastic. After you, MD. With power generated from boiler steam-powered turbines running off of water taken in from the River Niger, the water intake facility serves a central role. This canoe symbolizes general stagnation on these shores. Yet still functional, the managing director reminds us that the facilities have not stopped working.
Apart from the raw material that drag onto this site, one of the most important factors that is very relevant in steel production is water. Because water is required both for processing and also for cooling of the entire plant. It's a massive industrial plant. Most of the cooling is done by water, and also require this processed water for both industrial and process use. We have on daily basis pump about 45,000 metric cubic of water out of this place, and you can see that the depth of where we're standing about 16 meters. And we can see over there, we see the river port some distance away. We can't overfly the importance of having River Niger behind us, because it helps us to actually maintain and ensure that the plant is effectively run. And that is, what I mean by that is that the cooling system. Having plant like this requires cooling to ensure it can work very efficiently.
Absolutely. On the cusp of the River Niger, we meet jarring feats of human ingenuity. This is such an incredible sight, that you have this level of architectural sophistication, yet we understand that this has been abandoned for decades. Would you just walk us through what this is and this very long bridge we're seeing in the distance? Why are these relevant to the operations of the Ajaokuta Steel Complex?
Thank you, Ajuri. Where we are now is actually our port facilities, the river port. This is the dockyard. This is where maintenance of the ships that need to be carried out is done. We actually have the platform there, which we have just passed. Mm-hmm. You can't overemphasize the need to have a port facility at that point in time, because a lot of heavy equipment is required to actually get installed to make our steel plant functional. If you look at that way, you're going to see the bridge over mm-hmm. the river. Mm-hmm. That is almost about 3 kilometers. It cost in 1981. The contract was given in 1981 to Julius Berger, and it was completed in 1983 at a cost of about 300 million naira. That was a lot of investment at that time. At that time, it was about $210 million. It had never been used. Nobody has put the lay track on it.
Till today, nobody has used it?
No, it has not been used. The intention that time is that we are going to use the One port. This is supposed to go, carry material from here via to One. But, it has never been used because One has a deep port at that point in time. And we feel that when we have heavy equipment and machinery coming in, to be easier for us. It's a heavy investment, it's there lying fallow. You see something that, you can't, could be of good use to this country in terms of transportation system, etc.
With an engineering works complex, a raw materials handling plant, and a full metallurgical training institute on site, we see multiple mills capable of producing light steel billets and wire rods, in addition to higher capacity structural mills capable of producing standard gauge rail tracks, skyscraper structure beams, and other broad-flanked steel products. But then why is the steel-making blast furnace shut off? And why is there no steel presently in production? The answer requires a look back into ignominious history. On August 13, 2004, the federal government of Nigeria bypassed the Bureau of Public Enterprises, BPE, which had put up for bid concession rights to the Ajaokuta Steel Complex. After a winner had already emerged through due process, the steel complex was suddenly awarded to Global Infrastructure Holding Limited, GIHL, after the erstwhile incumbent president of Nigeria issued a presidential directive to abort the BPE's process and simply award the concession to the selected company. Just a few months later, on February 8, 2005, the federal government of Nigeria sold 80% ownership stake of the $1.89 billion Delta Steel Company to the same firm for a mere $30 million, despite having well over $1 billion in assets. And then, just 9 days later, the federal government of Nigeria awarded a 10-year concession of the National Iron Ore Mining Company, NIAMCO, to the same selected company on February 17, 2005. With that, the steel development sector from feedstock to processing was handed over to one firm owned by Pramod Mittal. This was done despite regulatory warnings from within the government that GIHL's ownership was currently being investigated for fraud and tax evasion in India, while at the same time GIHL's ownership purchased 71% ownership shares in Bulgaria's largest steel complex, Kremikovci, which, like Delta Steel Company, would end up pillaged and mismanaged. However, the Nigerian assets fared much worse as they were systematically devalued by being used as collateral by the firm to accumulate foreign exchange debt in local banks with no debt verifiably used to finance asset upgrades, but rather capital flight. In less than 2 years, by 2007, GIHL had run up $192 million in Nigerian bank debt, while pledging Delta Steel assets as collateral. Bulgaria would eventually strip this same ownership of their national asset. On assuming office in May 2007, late President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua immediately set up an investigative panel led by Magaji Inua to investigate the overtly sleazy transactions and recommend a way forward. Among other things, they found that assets had been cannibalized and devalued with evidence attached to the report. The panel found that the mandated upfront payment of $200 million, which GIHL was obliged to pay in order to take ownership of its shares, came with no proof of payment, as the BPE could not show evidence of payment, saying that it only took GIHL's word that it had paid, all while the Central Bank of Nigeria informed the panel that no certificate of capital importation of the sum had been given to GIHL. The panel concluded that the investment was never made, hence no ownership shares actually purchased as mandated by the share sale purchase agreement. President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua would accept the findings and terminated the agreements with GIHL. After the late president passed away in 2010, a new series of engagements intensified. In 2012, the federal government, through the erstwhile Attorney General Mohammed Adoke, established a negotiation team to enter into arbitration with GIHL. However, curiously, in the recorded minutes from its first meeting on July 24, 2012, the government negotiation team had already formed the opinion that, and I quote, "the termination was inelegantly handled, and there appears to be no valid legal reason for termination of the agreement beyond the fact that there was a change in government," end quote. This was in total disregard of the Magaji report, which clearly laid out the infractions carried out by the party in question. During the 2012-2013 arbitration process, it was noticed that the Magaji report was not cited by the government team in the quote-unquote defense of Nigeria during the proceedings. It was of little surprise, then, that GIHL would, by virtue of these irregularities, win further concessions in an agreement signed and approved by the erstwhile incumbent Nigerian president on May 17, 2013. Today, as a result of these terrible occurrences, Delta Steel is a shell of itself, while needless legal and financial hurdles becloud the functioning of Niamco and by extension the availability of iron ore to Ajaokuta, Delta Steel, and other rolling mills nationwide. One of the first signs of hope in this renewed effort to get Ajaokuta Steel Complex to where we all wanted to be was the engagement of President Muhammadu Buhari with the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin. And we know that when those announcements were made concerning the agreements that were struck at the Russia-Africa Summit, Nigerians were very excited. And it takes a lot for Nigerians to be excited because of all of the failed promises over the course of several decades, both civilian and military. So when you look at that, and you are part of those who engage directly with the Russians, what is the level of sincerity that you see, not on the part of the Nigerians now, but on the part of the Russians to actually fulfill their end of the agreement?
I think the Russians are very more sincere. They are conservative, people know them for that, and they promise very little and give a lot. Even if you look at the project, the Ajaokuta project, when you go to site and see the level of investment, the level of spares that were left behind to run these facilities. When they build these facilities, Ajaokuta Steel is an integrated steel plant where we have river ports, we have airstrip, we have power plants. They were sincere from the beginning. And I can assure you that the quality of the previous investment and what Russia has put on the ground is something that we need to be proud of. And I have no iota of fear that they are going to do anything contrary. We've engaged them, we have discussed the status of the plant with them. They've given us a proposal what they need to do. One thing is very important is that Ajaokuta was never completed. So we need to bring these original designers to come and finish this assignment, upgrade the facilities. This facility is more than 4 decades. So they have need for an upgrade, which was part of the discussion we have. And they have come out clearly to show us the plan of what they intend to do for a project that will span for another 2 years to complete the first phase. It will take another year to complete the second phase, which will give us about 2.6 million tons of liquid steel, and 18 months after then to have the third phase that will give us 5.2 million liters of liquid steel. So I want to assure Nigerians that there is hope, given the present leadership of what we know him for and what he can do. As of today, we import over 2.23 trillion naira worth of steel and allied products. By implication, by the time we get into this next phase, Ajaokuta will be able to provide the steel requirement for the country.
One of the common threads you see across sectors under the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is the willingness to shake tables, as it's called, the willingness to break jinxes that have been having very long-held strangleholds on the development of our country, whether it is in the actual reconstruction and rehabilitation of oil refineries, which are now being undertaken, whether it's now with the Ajaokuta Steel Complex and others. Are you concerned at all that there could be some sort of political sea change after President Muhammadu Buhari leaves office? The idea that the person who is elected president next, because none of us know who will be president next, only God knows, could be a deal maker, could be like those who have come before President Muhammadu Buhari. That is a concern. What do you have to say to Nigerians about the threat of policy somersault, about the threat of insincere leadership taking over this country once again?
I think that's what we need to guide jealously and need to ensure that the next administration we elect people of great integrity, people that are focused, men with great visions to lead our country. I can assure you that with this effort of the present administration, this project is going to commence during this administration. And one of the challenges we normally have is what we call sanctity of contract. But we're going to ensure that this contract is going to be made public and be as transparent as possible. And also to ensure that during the handover to the next government, we'll be able to tell them the benefit and what it takes. And since it's going to be open and transparent, I don't see any incoming government coming to cancel the project. It's enviable, all the due diligence will be done just to ensure that it's as transparent as possible, it's not personalized in any form, and that anybody has any good reason to come and stop this project after this administration.
As I always do, I have enjoyed this time with you, and I thank you for your viewership. I look forward to your company as I host you once again next week at this same time on this network. Until next time, may God Almighty go with you, and as eagles, may we all soar and lift our nation high as we do.